it's one of my favorite things to talk to other parents. And that's, I think, why the Peanut app is so valuable for all of us. So my story is I co-founded Happy Family and I had my first baby and I felt so confident about what I was feeding him. I was like, I got him sardines and he was, doing kind of all the right food for, his developing body. And I felt really confident about that because I had, really studied and like understood nutrition. But I felt really like I just didn't understand what was going on with his brain development. And I remember being on the floor with one of those, in our play space, we had like those foam mats and we had one of the plastic light up toys where, your baby kind of pulls up onto the toy and pushes a button. I remember he pushed one button and I was really kind of craving a little bit of connection time with him. And all of a sudden it was like, purple cow pops out and light starts flashing. And you guys know these toys. And I found myself, I mean, we have a lot of them. And I found myself wondering, what is this sort of cause and effect actually doing for his developing brain? Like, why is this helpful for him? And I had gotten from my birthing instructor this 2-part doctoral thesis, and I love sharing it with anybody who wants to read it. It's actually really helpful. It's like a stage-based program of activities and ways you can engage with your baby based on their development. And it's what inspired Love Every. And so if you DM me on Instagram, I can send you a link and get you a copy of the thesis. But I found myself discovering all these new ways to engage with my baby. And it was like a whole new world opened up for me in terms of feeling more confident, about his development and about how I could connect with him. I think that's one of the hardest things is being a new parent is like really finding your flow and really knowing what your baby wants to learn and engage with at each stage so that they're not, that you can really help them tune into the world because really, they're so little and they can't like get around themselves. And so really, we can be such a great guide for that early learning. I think that, I had like kind of all this nerdy things to do with the baby and really wanted to distill that into a more digestible kind of pieces of information that would help parents feel good about each stage. So at Love Every, we have this play gym, which has a whole guide for first year of play that talks about all these developmental milestones, especially the physical milestones and some of the cognitive that are happening in that first year. And I really felt like a lot of the information that we get as parents just isn't nuanced enough. And it's also, frankly, not nerdy enough. Like, I think that we as parents are craving just a little bit more of the why and a little bit more of the how. How do I bring this and make this real in our life? And so that's, really our mission at Love Every. So the questions, I think, is like, what are the things that I love to talk about with related to parents of babies between 0 and 12 months in particular? There's a number of things that kind of like come to mind as sort of like the important things that research shows that really can make a difference. And again, I've learned this over my course of my 3 children. So if I could go back in time, I would do more. And, it's not like I was able to kind of do all of this with each baby. I think we've really learned a lot over the years on what's healthy for development. So the first thing is this whole topic of talking. So I think we've probably heard that verbal engagement with your baby is really important for their cognitive development. What's hard is to know like a little bit more of the nuances of what does this really look like and how do I do this? I think for newborns, like talking to a little baby that doesn't talk back to you is really awkward. And I think one of the things that was really kind of helpful for me is understanding how important that verbal exposure is. It really helped me kind of get over the hump of the awkwardness of talking to this little person who doesn't yet communicate directly with me yet. And so one of the things that I did is I think no matter what your voice is, if you think you have a terrible voice, it doesn't matter. Your baby will love it. Singing to your baby, lullabies or any kind of songs that you can remember. We have like a little lullaby, or we have like a lullaby and silly songs booklet. But if there's a way to kind of remember some songs and sing them to your baby, they're really tuning into that intonation and the lilt of your voice. That's one thing to think about, kind of help get talking with a baby. Reading is always helpful, although they're so slouchy when they're little, and really oftentimes babies don't take an interest in books until around 6 to 9 months. That that doesn't mean that you shouldn't try and read to them, but you're going to discover that a little bit later, they're going to really start to kind of awaken and discover the joy of reading with you. Another thing that I think about in terms of language is the importance of research. In the beginning thought that it was like the volume of words. So just talk to your baby and try and talk as much as you can. And this feels like pressure. One of the things that researchers discovered more recently is it's actually more about the conversational turns. And when I say conversational, I mean like a 4-month-old cooing back to you, giving them space to make a vocalization and then vocalizing back, whether you're copying what they're saying or, saying something simple like, oh, tell me more, sweetie. And, having that back and forth conversation really, really enhances their brain connections for language. And this makes such a difference in even, even IQ and kind of studying, sort of how much you can talk to children, young children. They're really researchers are seeing some big results in their abilities to perform in school and sort of lots of benefits to this conversation. So that's the first headline, is just talking to your baby a lot in the beginning is just so helpful, and throughout their toddlerhood. Another thing is, one more thing about the talking is I've noticed that sometimes the interpretation of the rhyme method or Montessori method, like sometimes we talk as if we're talking to an adult and we're talking to our babies in thinking that we should maybe speak to them, in a more respectful way, in a way that doesn't have that sort of sing-songy voice. Again, research shows that natural voice that comes so naturally to you, where it's like, hi, sweetie, and it's like this like high voice, that actually is more helpful for them, that babies tune into it naturally more. So just don't hold back, be yourself, and be able to, do that baby talk. It's actually good for them. So that's the first thing. The second thing I like to think about is related to kind of how you're thinking about your baby's physical development. And this is something that I did not know when I had my first. I had him in a swing a lot, and in a bouncy seat in the kitchen, and a bumbo seat, and we would do strollers and the car seat. And when you think about it, your baby is spending a lot of time in what occupational therapists have started to call containers, like a containment for babies. They're spending a lot of time in these containers, and really what their body needs is to stretch out of the womb position in the beginning, and then build their muscles based on just being on a flat surface, on their tummy, on their side, on their back. This is really important for stretching out their neck muscles, to avoid flat head syndrome, or to, torticollis and tight neck, to be able to build strength for being able to crawl and walk later. But really the floor, it's so simple. I think someone asked a question, is it okay if my baby is just, on the floor while I'm working? They're just hanging out in the play gym and I'm working. That's great. Being able to give them lots of floor time. The floor is a great place for your baby to be. So I think that's another kind of aha that I had when I had my second, and I started more deeply understanding the research from an OT's perspective on the importance of giving babies lots of time to stretch out and build muscles on the floor. Another thing that kind of to think about with related to babies in that first year is novel experiences. Like they're really like the toys that you have. And I, here I am having a toy company, we're selling stage-based learning products and toys. The toys that we offer are really only like about, 20 to 30%, if I'm just, kind of roughing it out, but of what your baby actually needs for engaging and learning about the world. So the doctoral thesis had a section on something called house tours. And I loved reading about this. And it's something that's so simple, but it is the most amazing magic when your baby is fussy, when they're a little bit older and you can hold them in a front-facing carrier, putting them in a front-facing carrier and just doing your day, but doing it a little slower. So going in and opening up a cupboard and pulling out a glass for water and talking about what you're doing and going to fill the water, turn on the faucet. When they get a little bit older, they can help you hand over hand, turn on the faucet for the water. They watch the cup fill up, you slowly drink from it. They're learning, they are fascinated by the real world. And there is no toy that can compete with this kind of learning. So being able to deconstruct a box of Q-tips for a 16-month-old is one of the most fun things. Some of these things require supervision, and so it's not always possible. And obviously your engagement for the house tours, but it is a really great thing to think about if you've got a fussy baby or a baby who's really kind of craving more stimulation. This kind of thinking that you do actually have a lot of ways to stimulate them outside of the sort of manufactured toys that we have. And so these novel experiences are so great for their development. Another thing I like to, that I became aware of with my third child is the research on math and math learning and infants. So one of the things that we spoke with a neuroscientist who studies how babies learn math, and they actually do have some innate awareness of numeracy from birth, which is really interesting. But to really build on that knowledge, they need exposure to math in kind of everyday experiences. And so this doesn't mean that you have to do some kind of, robust curriculum on math with your baby, but it does mean, for me, it meant just thinking about exposing my baby to math concepts, just like I expose her to reading books. We talk a lot about the importance of early reading, and reading is so great for their development, but actually thinking about math in that same way can be really healthy for them. So it's like noticing stripes on a shirt. That's a pattern, and saying, pointing out patterns on a carpet. Being able to count things in front of your baby, saying when something is empty or when it's full. Also spatial relationships. So a little around 1, they're going to start to understand the concepts. They can start to begin to understand the concepts of, under and over. And if you repeat this, over and over again, like heavy and light, inside out, they start to really get a better kind of mastery of spatial relationships and how that works. So I love to, it's just kind of like a tweak, just like thinking, okay, how can I, think about math and counting and numeracy and bring that into my baby's world, but they're ready. And then for older babies, I think, a lot of times there's a big focus on milestones. And I kind of almost hate that word because it feels like pressure. And it feels like our babies are supposed to be progressing on this, kind of very predictable path. And you kind of can't help but look at your friend's baby and wonder if your baby is ahead or behind, or why is that baby, their hands are opening up. My baby's hands haven't opened up yet, or my friend's baby is sitting up already, or they're crawling. There is a really wide range for some of these things that I'm looking at in terms of milestones. So if you think about crawling, for example, babies start to crawl somewhere between 6 and 10 months, but the average time of crawling is 9 months. And I remember, with my 7-8-month-old baby being like, when's he going to crawl? Isn't he going to crawl soon? And he was a big baby, and, just really trying to kind of wondering if I should be encouraging him more into, kind of this development. The most important thing to think about related to milestones is my baby progressing based on where they were yesterday or the week before or the month before? Am I seeing these kind of micro development, milestones? Are they kicking more? Are they pulling up a little bit more in tummy time? How are they, their receptive language is a big one, because we're expecting them to kind of say their first words, and when they're not, it can be worrisome. But their receptive language is building so much in their brains before their expressive language. So they really need to hear repetitive words. They need to hear a lot of language and have a lot of, these conversations with you where they're vocalizing and they hear you responding to them before they're able to express themselves. So I think it's just a lot of kind of try not to be, worried too much or focused too much on the, typical milestones. There's a wide range. Walking happens on average at 14 months. We often think that babies should be walking at, a year. So I think at Love Every, we really want to help parents tune into what's happening with their child's development and how they can really be their best guide and notice these kind of mini progressions and how their unique baby is developing. So that is sort of the overview on what I love to talk about related to babies in the first year. There were some questions that I wanted to answer, and then I think more can come through. And I'm just looking and seeing if there's anything here. One of the things that was the impact on COVID on screen time. So, it is not recommended to give babies and toddlers screen time. I think that, I just did a podcast on this. I think that there's a lot of questions around screen time, but not all screens count as screen time, if you will. So the question is what is the impact of doing FaceTime or doing video chats with family and friends during COVID? And really, that's a very different thing than your baby or your toddler engaging in an app or watching a program or engaging in something where, they're pushing a button and lights are flashing. Video chatting actually has that magical aspect of serve and return, what the child development professionals talk about, serve and return. So you're having a conversation with another human on the other side. And babies are so smart. They can tell the difference when a real human is there. And so they are learning and having a lot of that beneficial back and forth, whether it's, somebody showing them something and talking about it, or they're cooing back to the baby. All of those benefits really do still happen with FaceTime and with video chats. So try not to let's take that off our worry list. Another thing that I think about is related to COVID is, will my baby be affected long-term because of social distancing and not being able to meet other babies or other people? And I will also want to help comfort parents. The research shows that there is no data that shows that children and babies need to be around other babies to have social emotional learning. They are learning, their primary learning is with their caregivers at home. So all of your kind of interactions with your baby are what's powerful for them. And there is no data, we talk to experts, that shows that being around other babies or being in larger groups of children or having kind of exposure to other children their age, especially in that 0, 1, 2 age range, really, it really doesn't impact social emotional learning. They're really learning so much through, these significant people in their lives, which is really you. I think that the other question is around, kind of the impact of COVID around play. And when children, I know that a lot of you have young babies. If you have older children, also in the home, you can do things like, sort of like, oh, I want my baby to learn how to share. And so I want my toddler to learn how to share. Actually being able to take turns is a precursor to sharing, and they don't need to learn to share with another child their age. You can do lots of turn-taking practice between ages 2 and 3, where you put a banana slice in the smoothie, then they put a banana slice in the smoothie, or you can take turns on almost anything. And that learning, I think it's about kind of shifting expectations. That learning is really, can be really powerful, can happen just with you at home. So there's a lot that we can feel better about related to kind of our kids during COVID. I think that of anybody, they're maybe thriving the most because they have us at home. They are able to be around other, adults in their life. And, I think that there's some research that says that the slowing down of not doing all the activities and not going out to, do all of the swim lessons and then the music class and then going to meet a friend. It's like these children, in a lot of ways just really love this downtime. And for babies and young children in particular, there is so much learning that can happen, in your Tupperware drawer and, in the bathroom cupboard, and by opening and closing things and playing with ice and water, and some very simple kind of things can really make a difference for them. And that all can happen at home. It's hard on us, but it's a little bit easier. It's a little bit easier on them. I'm just going to look. Is
Jessica,
Wi-Fi?
there was,
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. There was one question in the chat regarding if you think masks are impacting our little baby's development and recognizes faces and smiles.
Yeah, I mean, I do think that as much as you can, taking a mask, they do need to see their caregiver's mouth move. So as much as you can when you're in your home safe environment, I think giving them lots of time to be able to be around you when you're not wearing a mask is really helpful. So um, babies are very much wanting to read a whole face. They're wanting to, engage and see your mouth while you talk. So that is a really good point, Deb. That you brought up around masks. I read some research there that it is important to make sure that you're able to take off your mask and be with your baby. And then there was a topic of Wi-Fi concerning for infants development. I actually don't know, but we do, because I don't know, I'm sort of defaulted to doing the settings where I turn off the wireless devices at night. We shut off our Wi-Fi at night because our kids sleep right next to the router. So I'm not the expert in that, but I'm with you. I'm not sure about it. And so we do turn it off. There was a question about the impact of food on brain development, and I think that food is one of the pillars of healthy brain development. So it's experiences and food and genetics and good sleep are all kind of layer in to create our platform for health and wellness. And I think some of the foods that I love to really promote for babies and toddlers are eggs with egg yolks are really healthy. They're really high in choline. Choline is really important for brain development. I think for older infants, salmon and omega-3s, you might find that your baby eats really well and then the picky eating happens later. So, and really try and enjoy giving your baby a wide variety of foods. The other thing is that it can often take up to 10 times for a baby to accept a new food. And so thinking that, a lot of parents think they try 5 times and they're like, my child just really doesn't like peas or really doesn't like broccoli. Whatever it is that you're trying, just continue to introduce it. And over time, they will, adjust, and oftentimes, they will, it'll be a favorite food, but we need to kind of stay introducing those new foods. There was a question about what age do kids understand the concept of color, and when should I start teaching color to my baby? And this is the color concept is really interesting. Dr. Stasso in this thesis says that we do kind of overemphasize color learning. It's not like it's learning their colors is sort of key to the brain architecture, but it is a fun thing to teach them. On average, babies around 18 months understand the concept of color. So a little bit later, you might find you're, starting to become more verbal 2-year-old, pointing to, for example, I just have one of the play guides and saying red, 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 and everything is red or everything is blue, or they're mixing up, kind of, they're not actually naming and identifying the exact color. This is actually a really important cognitive milestone because they're understanding that there's a concept of color and they're able to to really note it. The other thing that's so interesting, there was a study at Stanford that psychologists found that after hours and hours of repetition on color learning, like this is a purple crayon, that children were not really picking up this concept of color and they weren't really identifying the color properly. But if they just switched their way of speaking and said, instead of hearing the raised purple crayon, that they say this crayon is purple, and they just switched it. So instead of kind of modifying the noun by saying, oh, there's a purple crayon, instead saying the crayon is purple, their children's color learning was much deeper and much faster. So I think it's really interesting when we think about it. Our language is structured in a way that can be a little bit confusing to little people. And so when you're talking about this, we say like, the book is yellow instead of saying the yellow book, can actually make a big difference on their color learning. Toddlers love to actually match colors, and they can correctly match one color to another before they can correctly identify color names. And we have a whole blog post about this at Love Every that talks about color learning. So it's so interesting. And then let's see, choline. Yeah, eggs are high in choline is one food. Cauliflower is also really high in choline. Liver is high in choline. And choline has been studied as proven to enhance memory, and both. So for there's, I think, somebody who's expecting, there's some choline. If you wanted to DM me, I can give you some insight on the choline that I took when I was pregnant. But I've gone down this research, and it's gone down the whole of research on choline, and just can't say enough about its value in our diets. And so especially for women who are pregnant and nursing and who are feeding, and in foods for infants. So there's a lot of research on choline. Was there another question?
Jessica, there's a couple of questions in the Q&A box. Would you like me to read through them?
Yes. Where is that? Sorry. Q&A box.
You should see it on the bottom. There's a Q&A, but I'm happy to read them out loud to you.
Okay. Sorry. I just see the panelists. Okay.
Yeah. I know. Yeah. So there's another box. So one question is from Rula. I'm curious about when and how to introduce music to my children in a way that's most beneficial for them. I don't want to overwhelm their senses when they're working on basic skill development.
Yeah, that's a great question. Overwhelming their senses is a big deal, especially in those first, I would say, 12 weeks. I think that, I think that music can be a great kind of combination and pair to a child's focus a little bit later. So, maybe, it's not like music isn't a really great thing to have on with your newborn. I think music is always can really enhance, but just try and make sure that there's not a lot of other stimulation happening with the music, so they can really focus on that one thing. They're really trying to kind of focus on one sense at a time. A little bit later, I don't know of any research that says that music and being able to focus on play is I think it's a great thing to have music on while they're playing. So I would say that is positive. I can look into that a little bit more for you. I don't know about the research that supports kind of those perspectives. Planning to teach my baby to speak our native language. This is such a great question. This is it's Shelley, you are so fortunate to be able to have a bilingual environment for your child, or just if you want to just speak in your native language. I'm not sure what it is, but whatever that is so rich for babies who have kind of multiple languages and are able to be exposed to multiple languages before, kind of like age 6 or 7. The science on it is that it's really, really, really helps brain development. And your baby might speak a little bit later if they're in a dual language household. But that doesn't mean that they aren't getting a ton of benefit. It actually is the opposite. I think they're really building out multiple pathways for language, and they're so ripe for learning multiple languages at a young age. So I would say that if they could speak in your native language at home, and then when they start kindergarten, they can speak, they can be introduced to another language. I'm not sure what your plans are, but I would just say 100% really exciting that your child has an opportunity to be exposed to more than one language during their childhood. So the question on, I don't know the answer to the formula feeding question on the temperature, but my first company, Happy Family, we have a formula that I helped to develop, and really it's a really, really high quality formulation. And there are lactation consultants that are on live chat for free, even if you're not using their brand of formula, that will answer any of these questions on feeding. So you can get a live lactation and feeding support in a broad range of topics at happyfamily.com. And leave her on the playmat. And because they also have other fussy babies they have to tend to, looking into space for other babies and adults around her. I think that's a really interesting question. I think that there is so much as a working parent myself and, my kids, I think there's always this kind of pang when you need to send your child back to work, you send child to daycare or, you can't be with them during the day. I've always taken the philosophy that there is so much we do have time with our babies, and just making the most of the time that you have with them to be connected and to enjoy them and, have some of these like experiences that we're talking about, like talking to them and giving them space is really the very best that we can do for them. And so if I think you could suggest that there might be a play gym for them to look at, but as she's looking at other babies and adults around them, there's a lot of movement, and that is really promoting a lot of eye tracking. And so your baby is kind of tuned into that movement. And so I think that they're, head turning, looking at different, people moving in space is really healthy for them. So even if it's not like a specific play gym per se, there's a lot for your baby to absorb about their environment. And TV on the background versus designating screen time or watching. I would say this came through a question, and I am going to defer to our this expert that I just spoke with on we've spoken with multiple experts on screen time. Her recommendations is to ideally not have the TV on as background if you can stand it, only because it can be visually distracting, but also I'm not sure how old your baby is, but it's hard to, let's see, do kids become more obsessive when something is restricted? They can, it's true. I have done not very much screen time for my kids, and I will say that it's been one of the things that I'm more proud of, because there's a lot of things in parenthood that that we aren't proud of, but it's one thing that has really paid off. Is my kids just love to read. They will look at books. They love they're pretty good at independent play. They're making things. So I think boredom is okay. Boredom can breed creativity. And then I would say, if you can kind of keep the TV off of their environment, it helps them focus a little bit more. And even if they're kind of whiny to you, research shows that about 10 minutes after they whine and say that they're bored, they will have a burst of creativity. So there's this woman named Screen Free Mom, Dr. Megan Owens, that I did a podcast episode with, and she has some tips and a lot of insight on screen time too. And yes, there are plans for us to expand. We're working on the 3-year-old play kits right now. That's going to be a while. We're looking to launch them next summer, but we're so excited. Three is such a fun age. So we're really excited to extend the play kits. Thank you for asking. And thank you, Supriya. I hope I'm saying your name right. That is so sweet. Thank you for supporting us so much. Your 9-month-old baby is super active. Yes. And they like to crawl over the house. He stopped playing with his love every toys, and it's very difficult to make him stay in one place to interact with the toys. How do we deal with that and get him to interact with his toys again? I will say that as much as I would love to say that, our toys at this moment in his life are important, it looks like he is on the move, and congratulations. And that's so wonderful. I think that one of the things that that children who are on the move, they're really sounds like your little guys are really craving a ton of stimulation. And I think that one of the things that we like to say is, again, what is in the house already that can be stimulating to them. And, the toys are one piece of that learning. I think in a lot of ways, we've heard a lot of people whose babies are kind of take a little bit of more of a pause on some of the toys, but then come back to them a month or two later. So a lot of the products that we put in our kits extend much further than sort of the window that we deliver them. And so, for example, I heard the heavy and light balls were whole new learning for a 2-year-old than they were with their baby. And so I think, don't worry about forcing anything on making them kind of play with the toys. It sounds like he's really learning and super engaged and discovering a lot from his environment. So trying to keep him kind of stimulated is probably a lot of work, but probably really rewarding. And how would you go about introducing 2 native languages, not English, to your baby? I'm not an expert in bilingualism, but I will say that is like wonderful. And as much as you can, I think, speaking in both languages is really positive. I am going to do a podcast episode on bilingual learning and bilingual households, and I'm really excited to help answer this question. So sorry about not being able to answer that precisely. And then the play mat with the baby. So we have this play gym. If you want to check it out, I have it here. I don't know if you can see it. This is our Love Every Play Gym. And we have a play guide that comes with the gym. And, I think that one of the things that we talk about in this guide is that there is so much learning through every kind of stage. We have this play gym for 12 months and beyond because it has a little play space cover where they can be cozy, but we have different stages that we offer, and I can kind of show you on the gym. But let's see, you can see this. We have these black and white cards. And so we start with more simple images, and then it moves to more complex images. And in the play guide, there are a ton of ways to engage in activities, but you take these little cards out. And this is really great for side lying. The play gym is really wonderful for trying to help promote that head turning. So your baby will oftentimes kind of have a preference for turning their head to one side or the other. And it's kind of hard to get them to look, especially as a newborn. So I would say from newborn and beyond, there's a hiding and finding zone. There's different sensory exposure. We have the sensory strands on this gym, which is really fun, adds different texture. This is really great for batting and grasping. So I would say the play gym is really great from the beginning, from the very kind of newborn stage. And how much floor time does a 5-month-old need in a day? My baby hates tummy time, unfortunately. This is such a challenge. At 5 months old, one of the things that we like to talk about is tummy time being a play position, but it's not really the entertainment. So at 5 months, your baby is really looking for more stimulation and more exposure to novel experiences. And so one of the things that we like to talk about is doing like sensory, like what is it that you can entertain your child with while they're in this, belly down play position. So a lot of times we hear, babies don't like tummy time at all, but if you give them something to distract them, one of the things that we, at like 3-4 months, you can do even some herbs on a tray, or at 5 months, if you're supervising them, you can even put like a little bit of, absolutely supervise them, but a little bit of water in a shallow baking dish, and they can splash the water a little bit if their hands are up. You can, kind of read to them a book, but they do need to be, there needs to be something to engage them, especially at that 5 months when they're really craving stimulation. I don't remember exactly. I want to say it's 30 minutes a day of tummy time at 5 months, but I'll have to, we can go reference the blog. But it's not like it has to be all at once. And one of the things that one of our expert OTs talks about is thinking about tummy time as far as, it's kind of like a workout. You have these reps within a set, and you have multiple sets throughout the day. So they might be on their belly for, 30 seconds or 45 seconds or a minute, and then they start getting fussy, and you're entertaining them, but they're, or they've got something to do, but then they're getting fussy. And then you move them out of tummy time, give them a little connection, a little break, then roll them back into tummy time for another little rep in the set. And so you can do that 3 or 4 times, and then come back to another, do that over again another time during the day. So it sounds like it's hard, but I think once you get the hang of it, it's not that hard. And it's a great way to get babies who are not as interested in tummy time, a little like building up their stamina. So let's see. Oh, yes. A learning regression for an older sibling, a 3-year-old, when a new sibling joins the family. Is it normal, expected? Any tips to help the older sibling cope? We've been through this twice now with I have 3 children, and absolutely, I think that having a new baby in the home can be really challenging. And I think that having a lot of compassion and giving is, it's absolutely normal to have a regression. I think that oftentimes they'll, they were potty trained and they're not potty trained. They were sleeping well in their floor bed, and then they're not. So I think that there's just having a lot of compassion for those transitions, and it's definitely expected. Tips to help the older sibling cope. I think, it says, giving them their own kind of attention and some special time and some own kind of roles in the family, ways for them to feel confident. At 3, they're so craving wanting to be helpful. And they've kind of in this sensitive period of wanting to really contribute. And whether that's like, using a little spray bottle and washing the windows, or, using a hand vacuum and vacuuming up, or just ways that they can feel capable and independent and, kind of powerful in their older sibling way, I think can be meaningful. Music or radio news in the background, is that distracting? I think it just, again, I think music is great. It's great to have in the environment. I think that it's just, for a very small baby, a newborn, those first kind of 12 weeks, it's really noticing and tuning into the numbers, the kind of amount of stimulation that is present. So are the lights bright? Is the radio on? And is there something like, are you trying to show them, a black and white image all at the same time? I think it can be too much. So I think just tuning in, you can kind of tell when your baby is getting overstimulated. Thank you, Brunella, for your kind words. Question on how much tummy time for a 2-month-old have. Let me actually, forgive me, but I think I need to refer to the play guide on the exact amount of time for 2-month-old. We have this on our blog, so let me see if I can look into this and then get back to you. But we also have it in our play guides of our play gym and our play kits. We have how much tummy time at the various stages. And tummy time counts when it's on top of you or in bed, and that I think that's one of the things that we sort of like think about, like how to take tummy time off. We have a blog post that's like how to take tummy time off the floor and with less fuss. And, one of my favorite positions is having them on your knees and showing them so if you have them kind of like your baby is here and they're on their bellies, and then you can hold a black and white card for them. You can feel their warmth. You can kind of adjust by moving up and down your legs, you can adjust how the incline for your baby, but you can kind of show them like a black and white image. If their baby's head's kind of looking up, you can more kind of encourage them to look up a little bit more. So there's a lot of different ways to there's no kind of you don't have to do tummy time, on the floor. I think that side lying also is really important, propping them up, having them, move and lay on both sides at 11 weeks. So kind of think about your baby as as a 3-dimensional little being. So flat on their back is really also very healthy. So again, yes, I think that tummy time on you is a great way to do it at that age. There's questions on, is it okay to have TV on while 15-month-old is in your lap or just hanging out? I mean, listen, like we can't just be, totally present with our baby. We got to have a little bit of self-care in this whole thing. And self-care is really important. And if that means having some TV time while your baby is on your lap or hanging out, that is, that's like, I'm not going to say that that's not okay. So I think that just kind of having some spaces in time where stimulation can be cut down to, so that they can really kind of especially when they're like really eyes are alert and they're really looking and scanning their environment, giving them some space to have some kind of lower stimulation times to really look. Their eyes are the primary way they're taking in the world at this age. So how can I encourage my 5-month-old to sit up? This is I'm so glad you asked this question. So babies on average sit up later than 5 months. It's more like 6 to 7 months that babies on average start to sit up. And the best way that you can, kind of help your baby kind of progress in their gross motor development, and so sitting up is one of those things, is actually to not prop them up in a seat. So some of those bumbo seats, or where you kind of like put them in and their legs pop out. Some of the holding them up and kind of like sitting them up is actually not as helpful, because it doesn't actually help them build their important muscles. So if you see them sort of slouching in those seats, definitely it's better to put them, the best way to help them sit up is actually give them belly time, floor time, lots of time, being able to, roll around. All of those muscles that they're building when they're doing tummy time are actually really important for crawling and sitting up and walking later. So again, belly down, and we do have a bunch of ideas in our blog for ways to keep them entertained and happy during for a 5-month-old during tummy time. Let's see. A vegetarian, I mean, there's great ways to raise, there's a lot of different diets, and vegetarian can be very healthy for children. I think it's just kind of digging into the research and thinking about, vegetarian sources of omega-3s. There's a lot of supplements out there, I think, that are made from algae, that can be really healthy, but I think making sure that they're getting that kind of equivalent of DHA in their diet would be something that I would think about from a vegetarian diet. And when can babies start recognizing color, faces, and voices? So let's see. So we talked about color a little bit later. Oh, recognizing color, meaning seeing black and white into color, happens around 5 months. So babies, you'll notice, I love thinking about visual development. This is one of the things that I really enjoyed doing with my youngest babies, is between the weeks of about, like, really from birth. So like 0 to 1 week up to about 20 weeks, your baby will almost have this insatiable desire to look at high contrast images. And they're really craving increasing complexity in those images. And so we put those in our play kits and our play gym. And I'll just show you, like, this is an example of a simpler image that they might be interested in the beginning. And then you can kind of turn this over, and you can do great head tracking exercises or eye tracking exercises, and also head turning exercises by just slowly moving these cards into their kind of point of view. And so they're recognizing color more at 5 months. Facial recognition, I think, voices they're hearing from birth. And faces, they start to really understand that 2 eyes, a nose, and a mouth makes a face, I believe, around 2 months. I'd have to check that, but they're really tuning in, and it's the beginning of when they're starting to tune in, but they will be really fascinated with faces for many months. And voices, in the beginning, they're really starting to understand the kind of lilt of your voice, but then later, they're really kind of deepening their understanding of language and start to identify words around 6 months. I don't have a lot of great sleep advice. I'm sorry, I'm not up to date on the best sleep advice. And you care for a 15-month-old who's a very picky eater. What can I do? I think 15-month-old, they can become more picky. I think kind of trying to relax and know that the diet will kind of, that some days they might eat a lot, other days that they won't eat very much. I think continuing to introduce those foods and providing just a little bit would be great. And the Additional resources, I would say, Love Every Blog. We have a weekly series of emails, which we've really worked hard to be so respectful of your time and give you just what you need to know in those weekly emails. The doctoral thesis, you're welcome to, I'd love to send it to you. I can send it to you through Instagram. My handle is Jessica Rolfe. Yeah, and I think, we're excited to kind of continue our relationship with Peanut. So maybe there's ways that we can share more learning and concepts there. Rolling over. So one of the things that to think about related to rolling over is, and we have a lot on the kind of rolling over milestone in our play guides, but that rolling over, kicking play is actually really builds important strength for rolling over later. So being able to, we have this really fun activity where you tie two helium balloons to your baby's ankles, or we have a kicking zone in the play gym where babies can kick and they can make sounds. And I think that kicking is actually builds really important core muscles that build into being able to roll over. And I believe in the beginning there, I want to say that there's stages that we have on our blog for rolling over. And I remember writing the blog post, but now I'm forgetting what the stages were, but I know that there's back to side, I think comes first. Then I think belly to back comes next. And then I think it's back to belly. So check our blog, but we have all the kind of average ages of when that shows up in our blog. And speech development for 11-month-old, again, 11 months, they're starting to perhaps like make noises, make vocalizations, maybe even look at something, find ways to have a conversation. And one of the things that I had trouble with, because you hear me just talking, is I sometimes have trouble creating space for my children to respond to me. And so giving your baby a chance to respond and then talking back to them can be so great. And there's value in reading the same book over and over again, and there's value of reading new books. So you can't go wrong. I think books are so great, and continuing to, it's so great that you read to your baby every day. And I think maybe kind of keep some favorites and then bring in some new books. But at this age, they're really tuning into, at the earlier ages, they're really tuning into the kind of lilt of the language and sort of how sounds kind of come together versus distinguishing and understanding exact words. They start to understand like precise, more precise language around 6 months. And a 10-month-old and working on learning new words, tips to help her expand her vocabulary. The question before was great. Reading is actually such a great way to build in new vocabulary that you might not introduce normally. And then again, house tours, talking to them, going places, pointing out things. They're just so hungry for you to share the world with them and explain it to them. And what are your top tips on teaching discipline, manners, and concepts like sharing? So concepts like sharing, again, turn taking comes before sharing, and sharing can come, more like 3, 4 when they start to really, truly understand the concept of sharing. So turn taking is great. It's my turn, then it'll be your turn. You can do this with, kind of through their everyday life. And teaching manners and discipline, there's a concept that I have loved discovering, which is called positive discipline. And it's trying to not focus as much on shame related to discipline, but really focus on, the positive behaviors that you want to see more of. And so we have some blog posts on that as well. And I think there's a lot on the discipline topic. I hear you. It's something that I'm still struggling with my kids. Our baby sometimes likes to be left alone in his pack and play, and he talks and giggles to himself. Is this way of telling me he's overstimulated? Maybe, or there could be just, I think that there's some benefits for them to just, if your baby is happy and is, kind of talking to themselves, I think that can be a really positive thing. They're still understanding how their body works in space, and there's just so much learning that's happening. we'd love for our babies and our children to want to be with us all the time, but sometimes they do need a little space. And it sounds like you've got a little person that might be more prone to independent play earlier than other children. And leave our baby on the floor to move around to help with their motor skills. Is it the same when in bed? I'm not exactly sure about this. It might depend on the firmness of the bed, but I would love to ask our OT. So if you DM me later, I help get an answer to that. To roll belly to back. Yeah, so that belly, okay, so belly to back is a little bit trickier. I think just, one of the things that we've talked about is kind of encouraging them when they're on their belly. You can kind of help them, kind of move their hips and their legs to help them roll in and out. That might help with the frustration. But again, a lot of tummy time. Sounds like she's doing so well with rolling. So I think just kind of keep it up. And I have a lot of book recommendations. I think this doctoral thesis is great for this kind of stage that you're in right now. I love 0 to 5. I love Brain Rules for Baby. I liked Super Baby. There's some great books out there. If you have time to read them, we've tried to make these play guides sort of mini books for just kind of what you need to know for these 2-month stages with activity ideas, what's happening with their milestones, because it is I haven't been reading any new books recently because it's like so hard to find time. And when are the quilted blankets coming out and how much will they be? So they are coming out soon. We're launching in time for the holidays, and thank you for asking. And we're still settling on the price, but I think it will be somewhere around $100 for the organic quilt. Thank you for asking. And speak to different ways to use the crawling tunnel. Oh, there's so many fun ways to use the crawling tunnel. I think hiding some things in the crawling tunnel and doing object permanence games where you can say, where's the red shoe, and show them that you're hiding the red shoe into the crawling tunnel, and having them kind of discover it and come bring it out to you is really fun. Both of you kind of, having them crawl to you in the tunnel is really fun, but it's a great idea to do. We should do a blog post or more activities related to the crawling tunnel. Thank you for reminding me about that, Christine. I appreciate your question. So I think that we're about up on time. How early should you start reading? I can't help but answering this one. From birth, I think getting them really used to being cozy, hearing your voice. Reading can take, just a minute at this age, or, short time. You can read black and white, look at black and white images. We have a little black and white book that comes with our 0 to 12-week-old play kit. But, I think that reading can be a habit that you can start from the beginning. So thank you so much for having me. This has been so great. I've really loved being in community with all of you. I so appreciate you taking this hour with me. Thank you.
Thank you, Jessica, for answering everyone's questions. That was really great of you. Thanks so much for the knowledge too.
It's been great. All right. Well, thank you.
All right. Have a great night, everyone.
Thank you. Bye.